Okay, so in this video we're looking at the last element of the transformation process. So far I've looked at the influence of the 4 V's. Then we've had a look at sequencing and scheduling, particularly with respect to Gantt charts and critical path analysis. Then we looked at technology, task design and process layout. And now we'll be focusing on the last element, which is monitoring how things are going in the operations process and specifically transformation, controlling it, so potentially putting changes in place, and then ultimately making improvements. Okay, so what is monitoring about? And what does that mean? It's measuring the actual performance against what was planned. So what actually happened versus what was planned to occur. So in the context of operations, that might be what was the planned, what was the planned making of a bottle of Coca-Cola, for example? How did all of that go? How did we go with respect to volume, variety, variation, demand, and visibility, for example? Versus what actually happened. Did it take longer than it was planned to take? Was it? Did we have to throw out more defects along the way? Actually, versus what was planned. So monitoring, constantly monitoring, and saying, okay, how are things going? What are we planning to occur versus what was the actual performance? And that might be done using key performance indicators or KPIs. So that's where you predetermine variables that are measured so that appropriate controls can be and processes can be made. So for example, a KPI could be for every 1,000 bottles of Coca-Cola that we're going to make, we would expect that 2 would need to be discarded. Or for every 1,000,000 Coca-Cola bottles, we would expect that there's the time to make them might vary by 1 minute either side, plus or minus. That might be a KPI. So those key performance indicators are a way to monitor and then allow a business to potentially make changes should it be required. So some examples of KPIs might be, for example, wait time. So what might be expected for a plant to have to wait, a manufacturing plant to have to wait at certain periods of time. Inventory turnover. So what are we expecting in terms of having to throw out defects, like I mentioned before, and then defect rates. Process flow rates, so how long is it going to take to actually complete a process, and how many processes can we complete in a certain period of time. Capacity or volume, and then IT maintenance costs or some direct and indirect cost analysis so in terms of cost overruns or cost underruns. So what's cost in terms of cost too much or cost too little versus what was planned for anyway. Controlling is when you take those KPIs, you make an assessment of them and potentially, not always, but potentially take corrective action. So making changes to the overall process, the transformation process, if the targets haven't been met. So those KPIs would represent the targets. If the targets haven't been met, such as, and the change might be redesign the facility layout or adjust the level of technology to try to overcome this problem. And then lastly, improvement. I think the word pretty much says it all, but making changes, overall changes to the process to overcome a systemic reduction of inefficiencies or to improve the systemic reduction of inefficiencies and wastage, poor work processes, and remove any bottlenecks. So bottlenecks when the process has been slowed down for some reason. You'd normally look for improvement in things like time, process flows, and smoothness of transition between transforming processes, the quality, so the level of quality. Let's seek to improve the quality of each Coca-Cola bottle, for example, because for some reason recently the labels have been coming out off-center. Costs, if we're experiencing too high costs and a lack of efficiency, you'd seek improvements in that area. Okay, and I'll leave it at that.